Hi, I'd like to welcome you today for our study in the parables. Tony and I have had a pretty wild day today, so I'm just doing this video on my own. She'll be back tomorrow. We have moved from a section of parables dealing with discipleship, and now we're going to deal with discipleship plus money. What to do with money. Our first parable is called the parable of the rich fool. The setting is a time where Jesus was meeting with a crowd, and someone said this: "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the family inheritance with me." But he said, that's Jesus, "Friend, who set me to be a judge or arbiter over you?" And then Jesus turned to the whole crowd. Here's what he said: "Take care, be on your guard against all kinds of greed, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of possessions." Luke chapter 12, verses 13 through 15. If we were to do a survey of all that the Bible has to say about greed and money, or trying to secure our lives by what we own, we would spend a long time studying that. There's lots to be said. Let me pick out a couple of passages. Solomon, who was rich and wise, had this to say in the book of Ecclesiastes: "The lover of money will not be satisfied with money, nor the lover of wealth with gain. This is also vanity." Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verse 10. Jesus, in the Sermon on the Mount, had this to say: "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust consume, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, for where neither moth nor rust consumes, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." Matthew chapter 6, verses 19 through 21. Now, the man in our parable who illustrates how foolish it is to disregard Solomon in Ecclesiastes and Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount, he is called a fool. Fool's pretty strong language. In fact, Jesus told us, if you say, "You fool," you will be liable to the hell of fire. Matthew chapter 5, verse 22. Nevertheless, in the parable, God called this man a fool. He said, and let's tell the story. He said, the land of a rich man produced abundantly. And he thought to himself, "What should I do? For I have no place to store my crops." Then he said, "I'll do this. I'll pull down my barns and build larger ones. I'll store up my grain and my goods. I'll say to my soul, 'Soul, you've ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, and be merry.' But God said, 'You fool, this night your life is being demanded of you, and the things you prepared, whose will they be?' And then Jesus concluded with this note: 'So it is with those who store up treasures for themselves, but are not rich towards God.'" Luke chapter 12, verses 16 through 21. If God called this man a fool, we ought to ask ourselves, what characterizes him as a fool? In the book of Psalms, number 14, verse 1, "Fools say in their heart, 'There is no God.' They're corrupt. They do abominable deeds. There's no one who does good." Now, these fools didn't go around saying there's no God. They acted as if there were no God. Their behavior was such that they lived in a way that people could say, those people don't believe in God. If you go down that Psalm 14 a little further, you'll find kind of behavior that is connected with this rich fool. They worked their laborers as if they were commodities. Here's how the Psalm writes it. It says, "Have they no knowledge? All the evildoers who eat up my people as they eat bread, and don't call on the Lord." Psalm 14, verse 4. The fool is someone who uses other people for their own gain. And God says they're a fool. Now, the wisdom of Jesus confronts this kind of self-centered striving where people think they can acquire wealth and then relax and eat and drink and be merry like the rich fool said. Here's what he had to say: For those who want to save their life will lose it, and those who lose their lives for my sake will find it. And then he added this piece of wisdom. For what will it profit them if they gain the whole world but forfeit their life? Or what will they give in return for their life? Matthew chapter 16, verse 25 and 26. The fool strives to save his or her own life, and they end up losing it. The wise person gives up their life, follows Jesus, and ends up finding what life is really all about. Now, the parable of the rich fool is framed by two of Jesus' sayings, kind of like my picture frame of my grandson back here. One side, one side. It's framed, and in the middle there's the parable. So on one side of the frame we have, take care. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of possessions. That's verse 15. The other side of the frame is, so it is with those who store up treasures from themselves, but they're not rich toward God. The message is really clear. Wise people make the choice to be rich in their relationship with God. They don't let anything stand in the way between being a friend and a follower of Jesus. Now, as I was thinking about this, my mind went to John Wesley. John Wesley was a wise man. I was looking on the internet for a quote and I couldn't find it, but I'm going to try to dredge up my memory. John Wesley, when he died, owned his cloak, his preaching cloak that he preached in. He had a bowl and a spoon and a Bible. He had written all sorts of sermons. He had written all sorts of music. He never tried to get royalties off of any of that. In fact, he paid money out of his own pocket to have them printed. I found out that he traveled 250,000 miles by horseback. He preached about 40,000 sermons across the country. He reached out to the poor, the downtrodden. He worked on social issues, prison reform, and universal education until the day he died at age 87. When he died, here's what he had to say. People were around him. They were holding his hand. He said, farewell, farewell. The best of all is God is with us. Then he lifted his arms and he said again, the best of all is God with us. What a contrast between the fool and the follower of Jesus. Let's make the right decision. Thanks so much for being a part today. God bless you. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow.